Good morning, girls and boys. So now we start with part 2 of the poem Abhisara The Tryst. So I'll quickly, we'll start with the last part, that is part 3 now. So I'll quickly recap part 2. Before we begin part 3, we will quickly revise what we learned in part 2. Now, at the end of part 1, Upagupta had promised Vasavdutta that he would visit her when the time was right. Part 2 begins with a stormy August night, creating a sense of fear and uncertainty. The poet then tells us that less than a year has passed and the scene changes completely. It is now a beautiful spring evening. The trees are covered with blossoms, sweet flute music fills the air, and the citizens have gone to the woods to celebrate the festival of flowers. This peaceful and joyful atmosphere sets the stage for the final and most touching part of the poem. So let's begin and conclude the last part, that is part 3 of the poem. From the mid-sky gazed the full moon on the shadows of the silent town. From the mid-sky, meaning from high up in the middle of the sky, it creates a broad and peaceful night setting. Gazed the full moon. That is, the full moon seemed to look down at the town. Literary device used here is personification. Why? Because the moon is given the human action of gazing, and what effect it is creating, it makes the scene feel calm, watchful, and alive. On the shadows, meaning moonlight falls on the dark shadowy areas of the town. Of the silent town, meaning the town is completely quiet and still. The silence prepares the reader for the emotional scene that follows. So, to summarize, the full moon looked down from the middle of the sky upon the dark shadows of the quiet town. The literary devices used here are personification, visual imagery, as in full moon, shadows, silent town, which is creating an atmosphere of a calm night. Contrast here is light of the moon versus the shadows of the town. And this contrast reflects beauty mixed with sadness and also peace mixed with loneliness. Symbolism has also been used because full moons represents calmness, spiritual light, and quiet observation. And shadow symbolizes suffering, loneliness, or the impermanence nature. Now, a quick exam ready interpretation would be the poet personifies the full moon as a silent observer looking down upon the quiet town. The contrast between moonlight and shadow creates a peaceful yet slightly melancholic atmosphere. Melancholic means sad, sorrowful, or also it also means thoughtful in a quiet way, preparing the readers for the tragic scene ahead. The young ascetic was walking in the lonely street. The young ascetic means the line refers to Upagupta, who is a Buddhist monk. Ascetic means a person who lives a simple and spiritual life away from worldly pleasures. An important point here is even after the passage of time, he is still identified by his spiritual nature, not by wealth or appearance. Was walking, meaning he is calmly moving through the street. In the lonely street, meaning the street is empty and silent. Lonely here means deserted, not crowded. So, a simple meaning would be the young monk Upagupta was walking alone through an empty and quiet street. Literally, devices used here are imagery, symbolism, and atmosphere. Now, atmosphere uh, The atmosphere basically creates silence, calmness, anticipation, and the readers feel something important is about to happen. An exam ready interpretation would be: the poet presents Upagupta as a calm and spiritually detached ascetic walking alone through a deserted street. The lonely setting creates a quiet atmosphere and prepares the reader for the significant encounter that follows. While overhead the lovesick quails uttered from the mango branches their speechless plaint. While overhead, above, meaning above Upagupta's head, the poet shifts our attention upward towards the nature. The sick quails, meaning the quails or the cuckoo birds, are described as lovesick. Lovesick meaning full of longing or emotional pain or yearning for love. Literary device used here is personification. Why? Because birds are given human emotions. Uttered from the mango branches, meaning the koels were calling out while sitting on the branches of mango trees. Why mango branches? Because in Indian poetry and literature, mango blossoms and koels are traditional symbols of spring and love. Their speechless plaint, meaning sorrowful cry or complaint. Speechless plaint means emotional expression beyond words. He cries of the koels express deep longing and sadness that cannot be fully explained in words. So, a simple meaning would be: above him, the koels sitting on the mango tree branches were making sad cries of longing and love. Literary devices used here are personification, auditory imagery through the cries of the koels that create a strong sound effect in the scene. Koels symbolism has also been used because koels symbolize love, longing, and emotional yearning. Mango branches, they symbolize spring, romance, and youthful emotion. Oxymoron like expression, as in speechless plaint. A complaint or sorrow is usually expressed through speech, yet here it is speechless. So, this suggests emotions are too deep for words to express. So, an exam ready interpretation would be: the poet uses personification and auditory imagery to present the koels as love stricken creatures expressing sorrowful longing. Their cries in the spring atmosphere symbolize deep emotional yearning and add a melancholic undertone to the beautiful natural setting. Upagupta passed through the city gates and stood at the basement of the rampart. Upagupta passed through the city gates, meaning Upagupta walked through the entrance gates of the city. This shows movement from inside the city to outside its boundaries. Symbolically, this movement suggests distancing from worldly life and entering a place connected with suffering and truth. And stood, meaning he stopped there quietly at the base of the rampart, meaning a defensive wall surrounding the city. Rampart means a defensive wall surrounding the city. So he stood near the foot of the city wall. A simple meaning would be: Upagupta walked out through the gates of the city and stood near the bottom of the city wall. Symbolic meaning of the rampart or the city wall represents division between society and isolation, worldly life and suffering, acceptance and rejection. Vasavdutta later found outside the wall outside the wall has been rejected. Vasavadatta, later found outside the wall, has been rejected by the society. So, an exam ready interpretation would be Upagupta's movement through the city gates towards the rampart symbolizes a transition from the world of social celebration to the reality of human suffering. The repeated setting near the city wall creates structural symmetry and highlights the changing fate of Vasavadatta. A tragic sight. What a woman lay at his feet in the shadow of mangroves. Okay, so what woman? The poet asks about the identity of the woman. Literary device used here is a rhetorical question, meaning the reader wants to know who the woman is and what has happened to her. Lay at his feet, meaning the woman was lying weakly near Upagupta's feet. An important contrast to notice here is earlier Vasavadatta stood proudly before Upagupta and now she lies helpless at his feet. In the shadow, the woman lies in darkness or shade of the mangrove, meaning the place is beneath a group of mango trees. Mango groves are usually linked with spring, beauty, and romance, but here the joyful setting contrasts with human suffering. So, a simple meaning would be the poet asks, which woman was lying near Upagupta's feet under the dark shade of the mango trees? An exam ready interpretation would be the poet uses a rhetorical question to create suspense and reveal the tragic transformation of the woman. Her helpless position in the shadows contrasts sharply with her earlier beauty and pride, emphasizing the impermanence nature of the world. Struck with the black pestilence, her body spotted with sores of smallpox. Struck, meaning attacked suddenly, with the black pestilence, meaning deadly epidemic disease. Pestilence means a deadly epidemic disease, and the sentence means she has been affected by a terrible deadly disease. The disease is described as dark and frightening because it brings suffering, isolation, and death. Her body is spotted, meaning her skin is covered with marks and patches, which shows physical destruction and suffering, with sores of smallpox, meaning painful wounds and eruptions caused by smallpox cover her body. Earlier, Vasavadatta's beauty was admired by everyone, and now disease has destroyed that beauty completely. So, a simple meaning here would be the woman has had been attacked by a deadly disease and her body was covered with the marks and wounds of smallpox. Literary device used here are imagery, okay, wherein the body of Vasavadatta is described as a diseased body full of marks and sores. Symbolism, because smallpox has been used to symbolize the impermanence nature of the physical world. Contrast. Now, in the earlier description, Vasavadatta was described as, uh, you know, um, as she had jewels, youthful beauty, graceful elegance, and now she is described through disease, sores, and physical ruin. So, an exam ready interpretation would be the poet uses painful visual imagery to show the tragic transformation of Vasavadatta. The smallpox sores symbolize the temporary nature of physical beauty and worldly pride, reinforcing the poem's theme of impermanence. So, the theme of the poem is impermanence. She had been hurriedly driven away from the town to avoid her poisonous contagion. She had been hurriedly driven away from the town, meaning the people expelled her quickly from the city. The citizens feared her disease, showed no compassion, and rejected her when she became sick. To avoid her poisonous contagion, meaning people feared catching the disease from her. So, a simple meaning would be people had quickly forced her out of the town because they were afraid that her disease would spread to others. Literary devices used here are harsh diction through words like driven away, poisonous, contagion, which creates a cruel and fearful atmosphere. Contrast. So, contrast has been used again. So earlier it was used in the form of celebration, beauty, and admiration for Vasavadatta, and now it is being used as rejection, fear, and exile again for Vasavadatta only. Symbolism here has been used through the word contagion, which symbolizes social fear, isolation, and human rejection. So, an exam ready interpretation would be the poet highlights society's cruelty and selfishness through the hurried expulsion of Vasavadatta from the town. Once admired for her beauty, she is now abandoned in fear of disease, emphasizing again the temporary nature of the physical world or the worldly acceptance. An act of compassion. The ascetic sat by her side, took her head on his knees, and moistened her lips with water and smeared her body with balm. The ascetic sat by her side, meaning Upagupta comes close to the woman and sits beside her. He does not avoid her. Remember, others feared her disease and expelled her from the town, whereas Upagupta approaches her, stays beside her, and offers care. Took her head on his knees, meaning he gently lifts and supports her head on his lap or knees. This is an intimate act of care and tenderness. And moistened her lips with water, meaning he gives her water because she is weak, thirsty, and suffering. Why is this important? This is important because a very simple action becomes deeply meaningful because it symbolizes care for basic human suffering, compassion in action, and service without hesitation. And smeared her body with balm, meaning soothing medicinal ointment used to heal or comfort wounds. Balm. So, the meaning of balm is basically a soothing medical ointment which is used to heal or comfort the wounds. So, he applies healing medicine to her body. Now, a simple meaning would be the monk sat beside the suffering woman. He gently placed her head on his lap, gave her water to relieve her thirst, and applied healing ointment to her diseased body. Literary devices used here are imagery, contrast, because earlier Vasavadatta was the giver and Upagupta refuses, but now Upagupta is the giver and Vasavadatta is the helpless receiver. Symbolism has also been used through water. Water symbolizes life, compassion, and relief. Balm, balm symbolizes healing, mercy, and spiritual care. Uh, so there is a theme connection. Now these lines they strongly develop compassion. Why? Because Upagupta helps without fear or judgment, and uh, and it also develops spiritual love through his care. That is his care. and it is not a romantic desire. So he is caring for Vasavadatta, which is selfless, humane, and compassionate. Uh, impermanence again Impermanence again has been used to reinforce to the readers that physical beauty is short lived, but compassion is something that remains forever. Now, an exam ready interpretation would be the ascetic's tender care towards the abandoned woman represents the highest expression of compassion and spiritual humanity. By giving water and applying balm, Upagupta demonstrates selfless service that contrasts sharply with society's rejection of Vasavadatta. The final meeting. Who are you, merciful one? Asked the woman. Who are you? Meaning the woman does not recognize him immediately. Why does she not recognize him immediately? Because she is weak and suffering, and also because time has passed since their first meeting, and now in the present situation, her condition has changed completely. This creates emotional depth because earlier she saw him as an attractive young ascetic and now she sees him through his compassion. Merciful one, meaning she describes him as someone full of mercy and kindness. Asked the woman, meaning she speaks weakly and humbly. A character transformation is also shown here because earlier Vasavadatta was confident, proud, and glamorous, and now she is helpless, dependent, and humble. So, a simple meaning would be the woman asks the monk who he is, calling him a kind and compassionate person. Literally, the literary devices used here are epithet, meaning through the word merciful one. So this is a descriptive title emphasizing Upagupta's compassion. Irony has also been used. Why? Because earlier she invited him and offered comfort, but today he comes becomes her, or he comes to her to comfort and heal her. And there is a contrast in character shown through this line because there is a complete reversal in their relationship. So an exam ready interpretation would be by addressing Upagupta as the merciful one, the woman recognizes his compassion and spiritual greatness rather than his physical appearance. The line reflects her transformation from worldly pride to humble awareness of true humanity. The time at last has come to visit you, and I am here, Vasavadatta, replied the young ascetic. So, meaning, Upagupta tells Vasavadatta that the right moment he had spoken about earlier has finally arrived, and now he has come to her. Now, with this, we conclude the poem Abhisara the Tryst. Now, in the description box, I have given you a link. This link is basically the this link is basically question. Is basically what do you call this? It will take you through a set of questions and answers. So these answers have been written in my words, but you can use it as a reference point or to structure your own answers. Also, students, in the class, anything pertaining to this chapter which was difficult for you to understand, or a question that was asked and the approach of which you have not understood, or you have the answer but you do not understand why the answer to this question is what it is, please mention it in the comment box. I will get back to you with the full meaning and explanation. The more you ask and the more you share your feedback, the better these tutorials would be, and they will be customized specifically to your requirements. So your feedback is very valuable, and I hope the tutorial helps you prepare well for your exams. Thank you, girls and boys. Have a blessed day ahead. Bye bye.